Hello YouTube, welcome back to the channel. So in today's tutorial, we're going to be looking at parallel iterations in Python using zips and parallel iterations. So you might be confused, okay, what's a parallel iteration in Python? Okay, this might be a bit strange of a word, parallel iteration. So in this tutorial, we're going to go ahead and cover all the basics of parallel iterations in Python. So just before I even give you, we jump into parallel iterations, just a quick challenge for you to test your knowledge in Python before we even begin talking about what parallel iteration is. From there, you can be able to see a use case for parallel iteration. So I have this simple question right here. Given a list of salaries and taxes using Python code, just one line of Python code, that's the whole challenge. Just one line of Python code, create a list containing the net income, given that the net income is the salary minus the taxes. So at the bottom here, you can see I have a Python code down here. So I have a list of salaries and I have a list of taxes. So to find the tax for the first element, right, you take the 2000 minus 400, which will give you 1600, which is the bottom, right? So you can see at the bottom list you have 1600. So that's basically what you're supposed to do, calculating the net income of the individual, taking their salary minus the taxes that they have to pay, right? So I want you to do this for me in just one line of Python code. So produce the list containing the net income of each of those persons of the provided data using just one line of Python code. Just one line, like literally just one line of Python code. So that's the challenge. Let's see how you go about solving this. Like if you solve it using just one line of Python code, drop a comment in the comment section below, explain how you have done it. But if you haven't also done it, it's fine. Maybe you can think of using loops and other stuff like that, but that'd be more than one line of Python code. We just want a single line of Python code, right, apart from the data itself. Yeah, so that's the challenge, and let's see how you go about it. So just pause the video, try it out, and let us know in the comment section if you have been successful. Okay, so I assume that you already solved that challenge, and if you haven't solved it, it's also fine, or you haven't found a way around it, it's also fine. And that's the whole point of this tutorial. So we're going to look at how to use zips and zip function and parallel iterations in Python to address that specific question. And at the end of the tutorial, we're going to go ahead and solve this problem using parallel iterations in Python. Okay, using the zip function. Okay, so let's just look what you're going to, let's look at what you're going to be covering in this tutorial. So we're going to be looking at what parallel iterations are or parallel loops are in Python or in programming in general, how to achieve parallel iteration in Python, right? And then finally we'll use the knowledge that we learned from the second point to solve the challenge that we have, a solution to a challenge as a third point, and then finally we'll have a conclusion as a fourth point. Okay, so that's basically what you're going to be covering, right? So let's jump into it, and first let's try to define what parallel iterations are in Python. So I guess got this from the internet, and it defines parallel iteration. In general, a parallel loop is a loop whose iterations are executed at least partially concurrently by several threads or processes at the same time. Okay, this definition might look a bit strange and not so clear. Okay, so don't worry about that. We'll look at it just in a second. So look at this into depth as we go along. So don't worry about this definition. You can always come back this part of the tutorial after I cover some concepts, okay, and that to make more clear sense to you. So for now, just let's look at what an iteration is. So what is an iteration? Basically an iterable, okay, we call it in Python an iterable. Okay, or iterations, or you can call them iterables. So the best thing I should have used there is actually iterable. So we have iterables in Python, and what's an iterable? So iterations can be what's basically an iteration. So iteration can be defined as going through an iterable, right? An iterable can be like a list, a dictionary, a tuple, or a set. So an iteration is just going through those iterables. Basically, iteration is just a process of going through an iterable. So when we can typically typically do this using for loops or one loop, like you have to iterate through a list of elements, right? So you can use a loop, a for loop or a while loop. But how do we loop through multiple iterables at once? So in this case, we have maybe you have two lists that you want to iterate through at once, right? Without having to use nested loops or anything like that. So you might say that two lists at once. That's actually easy. You can just say, okay, I'm going to go ahead and use a nested loop. uh yeah, that's one approach. You can use a nested loop, and that will also work. I will just show you a code above that actually does that using a nested loop. So how do we do the same thing without nested loop? So that's the whole challenge, doing the same thing without a nested loop, and that's where parallel iterations come into play. So how do we iterate through more than one iterable at the same time at one go without having to use a nested for loop. That's basically it. So I have a code sample right here. So you can see in this code sample, I have two lists, list 1 and list 2. List 1 contains the number 1 to 3, and then list 2 contains the number 4, 5, and 6. So I want to go ahead and actually print it, iterate through both of them at the same time. So that's the first, maybe that's the first thing you can think of trying using a nested for loop, and that does not really look really good, right? That's not something that you might have expected. So another way is actually using another loop down. Just use a single loop for I in range the length of list 1, because list 1 and list 2 have the same length, and I simply print out the elements using the indexes I, right? So I get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 1, 2, 3, and then 4, 5, and 6 on the right. Yeah, so that's basically one way you can think of doing this, but you have used a for loop here, and you're doing this in more than one line of Python code. And let me just ask you a question: what if list 1 had more elements than list 2? Then our program will crash, right? Because we'll run into index out of bound or some error like that. So that will give you an error, right? So that wouldn't work. So how do we iterate to two or more iterables having different length at the same time? We're just using one line of Python code. Well, the solution to this actually, the solution, okay, this the way one we can think of it, but we can do better than that. And how do we do better? And one we can do better, or to implement parallel iteration in Python, is by using the zip function, which is an inbuilt function in Python. So using the zip function in Python, we are able to iterate through more than one iterable at a go. So we can have two or three or two or more lists, and we'll be able to iterate through all of them at a go without having to create any complicated programming logic, without having to create any complicated nested loops or stuff like that. We can just iterate through two or more iterables at the same time in Python. So what the zip code does is that it provides you with the ability to loop through multiple iterables on one go, right? At one go. That's basically it. So what it returns to you is an iterable of tuples. So it returns you an iterable of tuples, whereby the tuple, each element from a tuple is that element from the given list that you provided to the zip function. Now this might be a bit confusing. Let's take a look at how we can do this in Python. So I'm just going to go into my terminal, just simply change my directory to my desktop, and then I'm going to go ahead and change directory. Let me just change directory into my content folder, which is a folder on my desktop, and I'm going to change directory into my tutorials folder, and I'm going to make a directory called zip. Let me just call it parallel iterations. Okay, iterations. Okay, so you can just call yours anything you want. Just feel free to call it anything you want. So once I have this, I'm going to go ahead and open up my Visual Studio Code. Feel free to use any editor that you're comfortable working with, but I'm going to just go ahead and use VS Code. So once I have my VS Code open up, I'm going to go ahead and create a file. I'm going to call this one part underscore 01.py. Okay, so in part01.py, I'm going to go ahead and create two lists. I'm going to create like the way we had in example, right? I'm going to have list 1, and list 1 is going to have the numbers 1, 2, and 3. And I'm going to go ahead down here and have list 2, and list 2 is going to be 5, 6, and 7 respectively, right? So once I have this, we can go ahead and use a zip function for this, and a zip is an inbuilt function in Python. So you can just simply go ahead and say zip. So zip takes in a takes in a group of iterables. So you can see you can provide in iterables, and then you can iterate through those iterables. So for example, I'm just go here and say the following. So I can go ahead and actually say I can pass in like a string here. I can say A B C D, like they have passed down there. So A B C D, and then yeah, and then I can go ahead and say the range, number in a range. So we use 4. So I'm going to go ahead and say 4, and also range, range again. You can actually, let's just go with this 2. Okay, so this 2 is fine. So let's go and actually run the code and see what we get. So I'm going to go into my terminal. So I'm just gonna go ahead and bring my terminal right here. So let me just I'll move this onto another screen, so I have this right here, so I can navigate easily like this. Okay, so once I'm in here, I'm going to go ahead and simply say Python 3 and then part, and then simply run the file. So we got no output. Okay, and the reason why we got no output is because we're not printing anything out. So let me just assume that I print this out. What do you think is going to be we're going to get as the output? Okay, so let me just go back and run this code again, and now we get is an object, a zip object at this specific location in the computer's memory. So okay, so once we have that, now let me just iterate through each this zip code object, sorry, the zip object, not the zip code, the zip object, function object, and let's see what we have inside. So when we say for I in zip, right, for I, let me just for I in, right, and I'm going to go ahead and simply copy this right here, the zip, and then simply replace it right here, right here. And once I have that, I can simply say print, and I can go ahead and print I, and let's see what we get. So go back into my terminal and then run the code again. So this is what I got: A, B, C, and D, and then I got the numbers also in a range of 0 to 4, because I said range 4, right? So that's from 0. So you can see it matches the letters with the output of this element. So you can see A matches 1, because 1 it range is going to return to a list, right? So that's basically it. So that's one way you can look at it. Now let's go and actually apply this to our list object, and this should make more sense rather, because the range part might not make a clearer sense. So let me just delete all of this and simply pass in my list 2 here. So list 1 and list 2, just like that. So yeah, so once I have this, I'm going to go ahead and simply run the code again. So I can see now I have 1, 2, and 3, and then 4 and 5 and 6. So 1 and 2 are in a tuple together, 2 and 6 are in a tuple together, and simply 3 and 7 are in tuples together. So why do we get this specific output? The reason for this is that it's going to go ahead and iterate through these two iterables, right? In this case, just a list at the same time. So it's going to go through 1 and 1, and it's going to return them 1 and 5, which are the first elements at index 0 for our list 1 and list 2 respectively. So it's going to return to us that's in a tuple 1 comma 5, which it returns up here. So you can see we have 1 comma 5, and the second one is going to be 2 comma 6, right? 2 comma 6, and then we have 3 comma 7. So in that order, that's what we get here as a tuple of that. Okay, so great. So now that works as I expected it to, right? So great, everything works as we expected to. So great. So if I go ahead and actually try to print the type of this, right, what do you think the type is going to be? The type is probably going to be a tuple, right? Because if you look closely here, these are tuples, and if I run it, and then you can see we have a tuple object, right? So these are tuples. Okay, so great. Once we have that now, let me just comment this out. Let me just comment all of this out. So let me just comment this out so it doesn't disturb the next code that you're going to be writing. So the above code shows that we are iterating through the both of the list in a parallel fashion, and that's what this it shows that we're iterating both of the list in a parallel fashion. That's why we're getting that specific output, right? So to show this, let's use the code below to show that actually we're getting a parallel iteration. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is I'm simply going to say print. I'm going to simply let me just a zip and then pass in list 1, right? List 1 comma list 2, and I'm going to go ahead and convert this into a Python list. So I'm going to go ahead convert this into a Python list. So put that wrap that instead of a list, and then simply run the code again. And this time let's see what we get. So if I run the code again, now we get a list of tuples. So each of those tuples is a pair of the iterables that you have provided in here. So this the first pair here, which is 1 and 5, this is from the first list, this is from the second list, this is from the first list, second list, first list, and second list, and this is what maps here: first list, second list, and this is how we get that specific element. So that it iterates through both of those iterables in a parallel fashion, and that's what parallel iteration is all about. Okay, so great. So once you have looked at that, now let's take now let's have a list of variables length, right, with different lengths. So since size cannot give us pairs, what happens? Okay, so let's look, right, because what does it mean is that let's have a list, another list 3, and list 3 is going to have 8 and 7, right? So you can see 8 and 7, now we have only 2 elements. Now here we have 3 elements. So two elements to 3 elements. What's going to happen is a zip code is a zip function going to work? Is it still going to serve us in this situation, or is it just going to go ahead and fail? Yeah, that's an important question, right? So actually let's go ahead and say let's just make us go ahead. I'm just gonna go ahead and copy this. So let me just undo that. I'm gonna copy this, bring it here, and then uncomment it out, right? So bring back that function, and I'm going to go ahead and instead of 2, I can go ahead and simply pass in 3. So I can simply do comma and then say list 3. So now you have two three lists, but each of those lists, two of those lists have the same length, list 1 and list 2, but list 3 has a different length, right? By length I mean the number of elements instead of that list. So list 1 and list 2 have 3 elements each instead of those lists, it's respectively, and list 3 has just 2. So if you run this code, what do you think is going to happen? So if I run the code again, it's just going to return to me 2 and 2. That's a bit strange. So let's go ahead and actually convert this back into, so I'm going to go ahead and copy this code right here and simply bring it here, paste it here, and now let's change this to be list 3. Okay, so once I have this, I'm just going to go ahead and run this code. Okay, so now you can see with the classes are tuple, and then we have 1 comma 8 and then 2 comma 2,9. Okay, this is a bit strange because if you look closely in the first list, we have 1, 2, and 3, but it's not representing the 3 in here. It says 1 and 2, right? 1 and 2, right? 3 is not being shown, right? It's just showing 8 and 9. So what's happening is that it will only go with the maximum number of pairs you can get is the number of the lowest length for the lowest array. So in this case, this array has 2 lengths, so we only get 2, right? Because the 3 doesn't have anything to pair with, so it's left out. Okay, so that's where we only get 2 and 1 and 2 from here, and then which form a pair with 8 and 9, right? Since the 3 cannot form a pair with anything, it's excluded. So you only get the maximum number of elements instead of your list, which are going to be equal to the smallest length of the array, right? Instead of that you have written into the list into the zip function. So what if you actually wanted to get the actual data from there? So another way you can do is actually very simple. We can use long zip, which is gonna can deal with a variable length list or iterable. So basically one iterable can be 5, another one can be 6, another one can be 7, and zip long can take care of that for us by including all the pairs. So where a number cannot form a pair, is going to replace it with none. So instead of just excluding out 3, it's going to match 3 with none because it has nothing to match with, right? If you use list 1 and list 3. So let me just go ahead and to use list longest, you have to go ahead and say import actually you have to say from iterables, right? From iterable tools, I'm going to go ahead and import the zip long. So once I have the zip long imported, I'm going to go ahead and do the following. So I'm going to go ahead and simply say for I in zip long, right? So for I in zip long, I'm going to go ahead and pass in list 1 comma list 1 comma list 3, right? List 1 and list 3. So once we have this, I'm going to go ahead and say print, and I'm going to go ahead and print list 1 comma yeah, I can just say print I, right? So we can just say go ahead and print I. So I'm just going to go ahead and run the code again, and let's see what we get. So we get you can see we get a tuple. So the first index, or the first I will be a tuple in that iteration. So the first return to us a tuple of the first elements from the first list 1, the first element from the list 2, the second element from list 1, and then the second element from list 3, and then that's the end of list 3, right? Because it has only 2 elements. Now list 1 still has a number 3, so 3 gets mapped with none, and that's how the long zip works. So instead of just excluding the numbers that can form a pairs, like in the zip, when you use the zip, long zip actually makes it possible to just, instead of just returning nothing, we can just say none, right? So yeah, that's basically it for how a long zip works. Okay, now we can actually specify what to pass in case it doesn't have any value. So you can just say fill value, and you can say d does not exist. So just d and e does not exist. So now instead of just getting none back, now you should get does not exist, and you can see we're getting none, but now we have specified you're getting does not exist, and that's what the fill value does. Yeah, that's basically it. So this, if each iteration is going to return to us a tuple, we can also unpack the tuple if you want. So to unpack the tuple, you can just say we can actually just, let me just use this code right here. So you can say list 1, right? It's going to return to a list 1 underscore item, and you can say list 3 underscore item. So it's going to return to us list 1 and list 3 items, and down here I can just go ahead and say list 1 item, list 1 item, comma list 2 item, list 3 actually, list 3 item actually. So once I have it, I go ahead and run the code again. Now we should get back this specific output. So that's list 1 item and list 2 item. And then the reason why is that if you just say I is just a tuple, right? So I just unpack the tuple into the first list item and then third list item, tuple unpacking. That's what we have basically done. So now we're taking a look at how to use zip and the zip long method, inbuilt methods in Python. So great. Now we have a bit of progress. So now let's look at one more thing. One more thing that I want us to look at. Let's go ahead and let's have a list, right? So let's go. Let me just say we have a list of dictionaries. Like we have a list of dictionaries, and how do we go ahead to iterate through these dictionaries? So I'm just going to go ahead and here create a file, create a simple another file. I'm going to call it path underscore 02.py, and in path 0 in this file, we're going to go ahead and create two dictionaries. So the first dictionary is going to be one, and it's going to have a key name name one, and then it's going to have this is a key and a value, so it's going to be James. And I'm going to have salary one, so I'm going to say let me just say salary one, and its value is going to be just a random number, so let's say 2000. Okay, so I'm just going to copy this and paste it one more time. And for the name, this is going to be name 2, so they go ahead and change this to be name 2. The value, we're going to go ahead and change the value, and the value is going to be Janet and not anything else. So we're going to say Janet and then 2, and then here I can also change this to be just 3000 or anything value like that. Okay, so once I have this done, I'm going to go ahead and do the following. So I'm going to say for key, right? This is going to be a tuple for key comma value right, key comma value, and then I'm going to have another tuple unpacking. I'm going to say name one, name one, name one. Okay, let me get that right. So name one, and then also it's gonna have salary. So salary right here in zip, and then passing simply the dict underscore one dot items is going to return to us the key value pair. So dict dot item, and I'm going to also say dict to dict underscore two and then say dot items, and then simply you have to change this to be dictionary 2, right? So I'm going to go ahead and simply copy this from here and paste it right here, and now I notice this is actually a comma and not a full stop. So yeah, that's basically it. So that's all I have for this code right here. So I have just simply have a zip, and you're going to pass in the dictionary items. That's basically what you have done. So yeah, that's basically it. So I'm going to say value comma this in zip, and then dictionary one dot items comma dish two dot items. So it's giving me an error. Let me just say it says that expected. Let me see list two, dict two. It's already there. Yeah, that's basically it. I don't know. Okay, this is a for loop, so I have to say this and then go down here. I want to go ahead and print the key, the value, and then down here I want to go ahead and print the name one and the salary salary. Okay, the name one and the salary. So let me write the code and just take a moment, think about this. What do you think the output is going to be? So let me just go ahead and go into my VS Code, to my terminal, and then run the code. So this is going to be 2, right? So then we change this to be 2 and then run. So this is what we get back. So we say name 1, and then it's going to return to us the name, the name 2, and then it's going to return the name 2. The salary 1 is going to return the salary. The salary 2 is going to return that specific salary. So that's how, if you use a you can use a zip function for a dictionary to perform multiple iterations inside of a Python list. That's basically it. So to understand how this works more, you can actually do just print this out. So convert this into a list, and then just say list 1 comma list 3, right? But yeah, list 1 comma list 3. Sorry, actually not list 1. So it's gonna be a dictionary. So dict underscore 1 dot items, and then simply say dict underscore 2 dot items as well. So items, and then simply run the function. So let's actually call the function, and now let's run the code again. So this is what we get back. So we get back a tuple of tuple, a list of tuples, and that tuple contains other tuples inside. So it says list containing of a tuple, that tuple contains nested tuples inside of it, right? That's basically what we have. So you can see the name 1 goes with James, the name 2 goes with Janet, the name the salary 1 goes with this 2000, and then the salary 2 goes with 3000. And that's basically how we can look at it from another point of view. If you want to understand what the dictionary dot items does, you can just say print, and you can say dict underscore one dot items, just like that, and simply go ahead and run the code. So once you have that, you can simply run the code, and you can see this is what the item, the dictionary dot items provides you. There's a tuple having the key and the value pairs. So that's basically it for this. So that's how you can do multiple iteration, parallel iterations for a dictionary in Python. Okay, so now let's look at how we can do parallel iterations for other iterable types like tuples. So let me just create another file. It's gonna be part underscore 03.py. So in part3.py, I'm going to go ahead and say I'm going to create pairs. So pairs, and pairs is going to be the following. So it's going to be a list of tuples. So we're going to say 1 comma a, right? And then that's going to be another create another tuple, which is going to be 2 comma b, and then create another tuple, which is going to be we're going to say 3, right? Which is going to be c, right? So yeah, let's have those two values right there. So if I go ahead and say print print pairs, what do you think is going to get? It's going to get a tuple back, right? So let me just clear the terminal and then simply run this code again. So I'm just going to clear this and run the code again. So now we simply get back a list of those tuples, right, like expected. Okay, so now what if I want to unpack the tuple? So tuple unpacking, so I just have to use an asterisk in front of that variable pointing to the tuples. So once I have that, I can simply go ahead and run the code again. So now we have unpacked the values from it, right? So now I've unpacked the value, and this is what we call tuple unpacking, right? So one we can also think of this is, now let's try to use a zip code to do multiple iteration through this, because we're getting back a list of tuples, right? A list of tuples containing those individual elements. So how do you do? How can you apply multiple iteration on this? So you can get the number and the first item back. So how do we do that? To that, actually very simple. You say numbers, nums, and nums comma latest. So latest, and it's going to be equals to the following. So we're going to say zip, and then you're going to go ahead and plug in the unpacked version of that tuple. So pairs, so it's pairs, and let me get the spelling right. So once I have that, I can simply go ahead and run the code again. Now you can see this what we get back. So actually I didn't actually print anything, so that's why I'm not getting back the value that I wanted. So I'm going to say print, and I'm going to simply say print number nums, and we also want to go ahead and print let me just say print latest. Okay, latest later. Yeah, that's fine. So once I have that, I can go ahead and simply run the code again. So now you can see this is the output that we have. So we have this is a bit strange of an output. So you can see we have one. Let me just see. Let me just move any other print statement that I have here. Let me just comment that out, and then simply go back in here and run the code again. So this is what we get back. So we get back all the numbers inside the tuple, and then we get back all the letters on their own. So we have all the numbers in one tuple and all the letters in one tuple. So that's why you can use tuple unpacking and the zip function to perform parallel iterations in Python. So basically, zip will create a list of all the numbers and a list of all the letters, and then simply return them back to us, right? So that's basically what just done. Yeah, so that's how you can do multiple iterations, parallel iterations in with tuples in Python. Okay, by simply unpacking that specific tuple. Great. So once you have done that, let's go ahead and let me just create another file here, and let me show you how we can iterate through we can perform another kind of parallel iteration in Python, and that this draws us closer to solving the solution to our original question. So let's say that I have a couple of things, right? I have names, and it's going to be of type list, and it's going to be equals to the following. So if you don't know what type hints are, like I said, name and then colon type list. If you know what type hints are, these are called type hints in Python, and I have a whole tutorial on type hints in Python. So if you can check that tutorial out if you are not familiar with what type hints are. So Helena, and then let me just add another element here, which is going to be Janet. So we have Helen, James, and Janet. as the elements of the list are called names. So let's also have a list of addresses. So addresses is going to be of type list, and it's going to be equals the following. So it's going to be let me just create some random type in some random values right here. So yeah, those values are fine, and then here, and then just some random values, right? Great. And I'm also going to go ahead and type in having their salaries. So I'm going to go here and say salaries, and salaries is going to be of type of list again. So list, and it's going to be equals to the following. So salaries, we can go ahead and say 3000 uh 3000 comma 4000 right there. So 3000 comma 4000. So now you can see that we have three names, three different addresses, but only two salaries. So what's going to happen if you try to use zip on this, right? Not the long zip, just a zip. It's just going to go ahead and match this with this with this, and it's going to match this with this with this. Since there's no other thing to match up with, it stops over there. So Janet will not be matched with this one because there's no value in the salary list to map it to. So that's basically it. So to demonstrate this to you, I'm going to go ahead and simply have a for employee comma address comma salary in right. I'm going to go ahead and simply say zip long. So I'm going to say zip underscore long. So we're going to go ahead. We need to import zip long, and you can see that's already been imported here by VS Code. So great. So once I'm going to go ahead and simply pass in my names, right? My names, names. So it's gonna be names. We have names, we have the addresses, right? The addresses, and we have the salary. So since you're going to be using salaries, okay, so salaries. Since you're going to be using long zip, then Janet will be mapped with the address, the specific address, but that for the salary it's gonna be none, right? So we can go ahead and simply go down here and simply print the following out. So we're going to go ahead with my f string. It's going to go ahead and be the employee, and then we just close off that. So this is going to be going to have a forward slash a tab here. So the backslash tab, which is those special escape sequences, and then I have the address here. So address, and then let me just have the escape sequence again, and then finally I have the salary. So it's going to be a salary, just like that, and close this off. So once I have this, I can go ahead and simply run this one more time, and let's see what's up. So I'm just going to clear this, bring back the code I was writing, and change this to be the 5, and then simply run this again. So you can see we get the name. James gets mapped to the specific address, which maps to the salary, right? These are all have index of 0, and then all these have index of 2. And now Janet gets mapped with this one, which is correct. But for now, since we don't have any salary for Janet, it's simply going to map it with none, right? So none. So we can actually go ahead and say fill value. So fill value, and you can say fill value, and the fill value can say no salary. So now for Jane, it will now be no salary instead of the none. So it's going to be no salary. So you can see it right here. Yeah, so that's how you can use multiple iterations for different for different list items. So now this is going to bring us closer and closer to our aim of finding a solution to our code. So let's go back to the slide and let's see what we can find the solution code. So I've looked at unzip already. So another unzip is just the opposite of a zip. The exact opposite of zip is called unzip. So if you have something and you apply unzip on it, it's going to do the exact opposite of zip. So you can actually try it out, and then let's see what you get. So now let's move on to sort. Like, so let me just go back let's go back. Let me just go back this to in here, and let me just say sorted. So I'm going to say sorted, and let me just close off that. So I need to add another parenthesis right here. So sorted, and what does sorted mean? So what sort? So if you apply sorted to a zip function, what it simply does is going to sort the elements basing on this value right here. So you can see this value is going to sort the name basing on this. So let's go ahead and try to run the code, and let's see what we get this time. So we can see the ordering of the names have changed because H comes before J, right? So it's going to order them basing on the first value or the first iterable in the that you've provided to the zip function or zip long function. That's basically how sorted works. Okay, so now that we've looked at that, let's go ahead and continue. So now let's look at the solution to today's challenge. So the challenge was that given a list, right? So let me just go and actually type in that list that we have. So I'm going to have another file here. I'm going to call it part underscore. Actually, I didn't have part4.py, so I'm going to call this part4.py. Okay, so in here in part4.py, right, which is going to be actually part5.py, right, you're going to go ahead and actually solve the solution. So let me just write the question right here. So let me just type it out question. So salaries, let me just call it salaries. It's going to be a list, and that's going to have the following. So it's going to have 2000, and then you're going to have after 2000 you're going to go ahead and have 3000, and then you're going to have 6000, right? That's was the question. So 6000. So salaries, let me not forget the assignment operator, the equal sign. So once I have the assignment operator there, I'm going to have a list of taxes. So I'm going to say taxes, and taxes I'm going to say the following. So taxes I'm going to go ahead and say the first one is 400, and then we're going to have a tax of 200, and then finally a tax of 700, right? Great. So once we have this, also I can also add the persons, and the person is going to be a list of persons. So I can say James, and then we can have Janet, and then finally we can have Helen. Okay, let's say Helen. Okay, so once we have this, how do we go ahead and finding the net income? If the net income is going to be, because the net income of a person is salary, their salary, so salary minus the taxes they pay, right? So minus the tax. So how do we do that in here? So to do this, you're going to go ahead and use a zip and a list comprehension. So you're going to use a combination of list and list and list comprehension and actually the zip function. So to do this, I'm going to go ahead and say the net income is going to be salary. So salary minus, right? Salary minus tax, right? So we're going to say for tax, for salary, comma tax, right? In zip, and you're going to pass in the salary. So the salaries, comma, and then tax. So taxes. So I hope this makes sense to you. So it's going to go ahead and return. It's going to match the elements. So it's for the first iteration, it's going to return to us this from the salaries part, and then this from the taxes part. So it's going to be 200 minus 400. You're going to get 1600, which was the result we got, right? So again, go ahead and say print, and then simply print the net income. So that's the solution to the problem that we had. So if I go back in here and try to change this to be 4 and run the code again, let me just see, it says a node file. Okay, so let me just clear this and see what I did. So let me just let's look at which file we created. We call it okay, python. Okay, let me just rename that a bit. So let me just rename it, and that should be python 04.py. So once I have it renamed, I can go back in here and then simply run the code. So now you can see we got back the output to be 1. So we're just going to go ahead and text for each tax value. It's going to go ahead and subtract the for each salary value, right? It's going to pick its corresponding tax value and find the difference between those two values, which is right here, and then returns to us, keeps it instead of the list, and then simply you're just printing out the list. So we have done all that in just one line of Python code. So instead of writing simple complicated logic to do whatever you wanted to do, this is a simple way of doing it. Okay, now a bit more challenge. What if I want you to combine also the names? So I want to say Jane, sorry, James, and then colon, and then how much net income James have, right? So another way to you can do go ahead about this and say net underscore income, comma names. It's going to be equal to using a dictionary. So we're going to map the person to the salary minus the tax, right? So we're going to map the persons to their net income basically. For we're going to say person, comma salary, comma, and then you're going to say tax in zip, right? And you're going to pass in the persons, we're going to pass in our salaries, and then finally the tax, okay, the taxes that we have. So once we have this, we can go ahead and simply say print, and then you can say net underscore income, and then names part. So if once we run this code, now we should see James has a tax of this one, which is this value from right here, and then Janet had this value, right, which is the net income for Janet. Then Helen, the net income for for Helen is this one, and all these net incomes are found after performing this operation of taking the salary values minus the tax value. So the salary value minus the tax value, the salary value minus the tax value, the salary value minus the tax value, and then combining those specific names. So that's basically it for this video. So you can see how you can solve that problem in just one line of Python code, right? So that's the whole point, the whole point of using parallel iterations in Python. So this marks the end of our tutorial, and this made this slides using SlideGo templates from SlideGo. And thanks for watching. If you're new to the channel, please kindly consider subscribing to the YouTube channel, liking this video, and sharing the content with anyone who you think might find it helpful. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one, and keep safe.